Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25. If you open your Bibles, the actual physical Bibles, you will see immediately three stories. In Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25, you will see three stories. The first one is the foolish and the wise virgins. That's the first story that you will see. And the second story that you will see is the story about three slaves, three servants, and the master loaning or lending some money to them, three talents. This is the parable of the talents. And the last one is about the sheep and goat. So the first point that I would like to mention it to all of us is whenever you approach the Word of God, you look at whatever portion that you are reading within the whole context of that chapter, or maybe in some cases more than a chapter. And in this case, it's important that we go back to the previous chapter as well, chapter 24. Chapter 24, it's popularly called Olivet Discourse. Olivet Discourse. Jesus sitting on the Mount of Olives, overlooking the city of Jerusalem, particularly the temple. If you get onto some of you who visited Jerusalem would know this. If you are standing on the Mount of Olives, you will be overlooking the whole city of Jerusalem, and particularly that temple at that point in time. Now the temple is not there anymore because it was destroyed. It was the temple built by Herod. And it's one of the magnificent structures the world has ever seen, such a beautiful thing. And then Jesus was saying, there is going to be a time that one stone will not be standing on the other stone. And when Jesus is talking about the stones or the bricks, you and I might be thinking about the bricks, the small bricks, or eight inches bricks. No, we are not. We are talking about a brick or a stone as big as probably this room. The magnificent Herodian temple was built with huge stones. And how can someone bring down a stone from on top of the other stone? It is an impossible task, even with the bulldozers and the things that we have. And probably you got to use the dynamite and stuff like that. But that's the story. And what we want to tell you here is the portion that we're going to read now is coming within the context of Jesus talking about the end times. What's going to happen at the time that Jesus was going to come back. And within that bigger context, this story is coming. Within that bigger context, the story of the wise and foolish brides coming. And that is the end point when Jesus talks about the sheep and the goats, how he was going to separate the sheep from the goats and pass the judgment. That is the context this story that we're going to read come from. I'm saying glibly story, but in the Word of God, they are called parables. Parable is a story with a deep meaning. Parable is a story Jesus attempts to, or let me put it another way. Parable is a technique Jesus employed to teach spiritual truths in common language so that you and I can understand. A deep spiritual truth Jesus puts in a simple story, taking the simple, understandable situations of life and context, and then gives it to us so that we may be able to understand. Shall we read it from 14th verse onwards? So I told you about all of these things, right? Okay. Now, this is about the end times, chapter 24. Now, here it is, chapter 25, verse 14. For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country. This is the story, people. You can enjoy the story, the parable. For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country who called his own servants and delivered his goods to them. Verse 15, unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his own ability. And immediately he went on a journey. Then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5 talents. And likewise, he who had received 2 gained 2 more also. But he who had received 1 went and dug in the ground and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with them. Verse 20. So he had received 5 talents. So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I've gained 5 more talents besides them. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You are faithful over a few things. Now I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Enter into the joy of your Lord. He also, who had received 2 talents, came and said, Lord, you delivered me 2 talents. Look, I have gained 2 more talents beside them. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. But his Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. Verse 29, for to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. I want you to look at this very carefully. To everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This is the parable Jesus gives. Shall we bow our heads? Loving Father, unpack this story for us this morning. Particularly, Lord, as we are at the end of 13 years that you have given us, Lord, in this house. Lord, as we were going to celebrate our 13th church anniversary very soon, in a few days' time, Lord, pray that you speak to us, Lord, to our hearts at this point in time. Lord, we give you all the glory and honor, Lord, and warm our hearts, Lord, refresh us, and edify us, Lord, challenge us, Lord. We ask this in Jesus' precious name. Amen. 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 You know the story. 3 servants, 5 talents to 1 man, 2 talents to 1 man, 1 talent to 1 man. The reason for the Lord giving someone 5 talents, the reason for the Lord giving someone 2 talents, and the reason for the Lord or this master giving someone 1 talent, the scripture very clearly tells us. What does it tell? Anyone? Verse 15. Why did he give someone 5? And why did he give someone only 2? And the last one only 1? The reason? According to their ability. So the Lord knew each one's ability. but the Lord has been gracious to give everyone something. So, what do you have today that you have not received? Everything that you have today, as you are seated here, is something that you have received. Nothing is yours. In other words, God claims comprehensive kingdom ownership of all his creation, whatever you have. So if God owns everything and you and I owe nothing, if you have nothing, there are no owners here. I own this, I own that, I own that. No, it doesn't work like that. God owns everything. He has given you all that he has given you, and then is gone away. This master has given these people these things, and then he has gone away for a journey. He's not there. Now, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. Whatever you have in your hand at the moment, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. All that you have is not yours. That is given by someone, given by the Lord. And what you have now is the freedom. Now you have the freedom. God has given you the freedom even to mess it up. Mess up what has given you. And God has given you so much freedom that you can even hand it to the devil. That's what exactly happened in the Garden of Eden. You remember? God has created everything beautiful. There is nothing lacking. And he put it in the hands of the man. And he has given the freedom. And with one instruction, he left. What was the instruction that he left with? Tend it. Take care of it. I've given you this much. I want you to be productive. I want you to be tilling. I want you to be working. And I expect you to be productive. And with that, he left. And those people have, the two people, the wife and husband had so much of freedom. As the story unfolds, you know, that they handed it over to the devil. You and I are in that situation very much. That's what I want to tell you. Jesus is talking about money, people, here. You know, you understand talent? What is a talent? The English word talent has come from this parable, actually. The very word talent has come from this parable. Talent is basically money, nothing else. A talent is a huge amount of money. A huge amount of money. Someone calculated and then tells us is $1.4 million. One talent. So the man who received one talent got $1.4 million in his pocket out of nothing. Just nothing. Just someone gave. This guy didn't have a status. This guy didn't have anything. This guy didn't bring anything. But this Lord gives him that money, just like that, talent. And someone he gave 5 talents, and someone he gave 2, and this guy only 1. And if you read NIV Bible, NIV version, it talks about the bags of gold, 5 bags of gold, 2 bags of gold, and so on. But all said and done, this is money we are talking about. So there is a lot of criticism about this particular parable all over the world. If you go back and then look at the history of how people took this parable, and then many people criticized that Jesus is teaching capitalism. Capitalism, Jesus is teaching. And of course, Jesus is teaching capitalism in a sense, but there are some similarities only. I mean, since you have capitalism as a way of living as a principle, as a way of living, and then there are capitalist countries, there are other countries. But if you look at capitalism versus this parable of talents, there are at least three likely or similarities. Number one, deferred gratification. If you get some money in your hand, there is a tendency to spend it off. Many people, they get the money, New Zealand Wednesday story, everyone gets paid on a Wednesday, and then by next Wednesday, the money is gone. You will not stop from the self gratification. Immediately you go for an ice cream, immediately go for a bottle of beer, immediately you go for or end up in a pub, and by next Wednesday you are empty and waiting for that pay packet to come. Capitalism or the parable tells us, don't do that. You got to keep your money. If you are earning this much of money, you got to keep. That's number one. And the second principle that we get from the capitalism and from this parable is the principle of investing your capital. If you have $20, invest at least in the bank or put it somewhere that it gains a little bit more. Your capital gains more so that your capital works for you. And your capital will help you in the rainy days when you have difficulty, when you have sickness. You need that kind of capital in your hand. And this capital will work for your prosperity. Jesus is pretty clear in this. There is no secret about it. And the third thing is, this parable frowns upon your wasteful consumption. Wasteful consumption. How much you need and how much you are spending. Do you need, when growing up, we had chicken once a year. Trust me, believe me or not. I'm 60 years old now. Growing up, we had chicken only for Christmas. That too, we had to catch the chicken, not kitchen. We had to run after this chicken and then catch it. And then after all the drama, you have to dress it and then kind of barbecue or roast it on fire. And then that skin and all that becomes nice and brown and all that. And then you cut it open and the rest of the story. And they used to cook beautiful coconut rice as well. I mean, that used to be the daily. We used to just wait for that moment. Now, chicken become 3 meals a day nowadays. Do you need it? Do you need that kind of consumption? Do we really need that kind of consumption? What kind of food people are eating nowadays? So rich. So rich. That's why you got the diabetes. That's why you got the renal failure. That's why that you got, your systems are unable to consume and then manage that kind of eating too much. Anyway, the parable tells us about the wasteful consumption, frivolous spending, and immediate gratification. Immediately go for this big glass of something, a smoothie, I don't know what. People are taking photographs. If you go to the Facebook and then see people, the kind of food that they are eating. And these days I'm getting pictures of all that people are eating. Immediately they send it to me, they post it. They post it and then they tell me, this is what I'm eating today. And what did you eat this morning? Another picture there. And do you really need this kind of thing? So capitalism and the parable tells you, if you are standing here today, your situation this morning, your capital value this morning is a reflection of what you have done with your money for the past few years or whatever it is. Whatever you had so far, whether you saved it, whether you have invested that money, whether you had made anything more out of that, or you're just empty standing with nothing. It's a reflection. You understand this story very, very well because I have been the part of your success as well. I prayed in your houses when you bought your houses. I prayed when you bought your cars. So I had the privilege of praying over BMWs. I had the privilege of praying over Volkswagen. I had the privilege of praying RAV4s, big hybrid RAV4s. And I just missed the privilege of praying over a Tesla recently. But my sister was there, and she prayed for 25 minutes with 2 salesmen standing there over Tesla. Anil's joke, I'm not saying anything. But the point of the matter is we are thankful and then praying to the Lord for what he had done in our lives. And you and I understand what this parable means. When God created the Garden of Eden and he put it in the man's hands, take care of it, till it, tend for it, and I am looking for productivity. That's about it. Now, according to the abilities of these people, God has given them the talents, okay? Now, I told you that one talent is worth 1 million, 1.4 million, right? That's the talent's worth. Now, when we unpack this story and then look at what the Lord has given us, these talents or the gifts, whatever you call them, come in. When I talk about money, you might say that, okay, my money is coming from my company and I am working as a such and such person, so this is a salary that I'm getting and so on. Now, let me put it in some other way. You can unpack talent in 3 areas. Number 1, your time. I want you to note this one here. When did he return? When did he return? Previous one? No. When did he return? After, where is it? Which verse? After a long time. Here it is. After a long time, I don't know whether I put 100 O's there. A long time, the Lord of the servants came and settled accounts for them. They've given him time. The Lord has given you and I the time. That's number 1 area of his gift. What do you do with your time? You sleep, you stay in the bed, you only are there, or is there any productivity coming out of the time? What have you done last hour? God has given you 24 hours a day, and he has given this 24 hours, everyone, not you, everyone. He has given this thing. Lord has given you time. And within this time, the Lord has given you also the opportunities. Lord has given you the capability to do something. God has given you the capability to produce something. It could be just washing the dishes or producing a little bit more or cooking something or doing something else and bringing in more value to your time and using your capacity, your capability, bringing in productivity. What have you done last week? What have you done last year? What have you done yesterday? What have you done this morning? What have you done with your money? Because when he's dealing with the last man, his master uses 2 words to accuse. Number 1, wicked. Number 2, lazy. The 7 deadly sins Bible talks about is pride, greed, anger, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and laziness. These are the 7 deadly sins. If you are lazy, if you are staying in bed till 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, I don't know, 9 o'clock, and not doing anything, not productive, sloth, there are 7 deadly sins known as the capital vices. You search up these things, you will find it. The capital vices are the cardinal sins. Roman Catholics call it cardinal sins. It's all from the Bible. You got to dig deep into the book of Proverbs to understand so much about laziness, so much about laziness. And I want to show you these 3 pictures here. John Gray invested $10,500 in the stock of Ford Motor Company in 1903. When Ford bought the stock back in 1919, the stock was worth a whooping 26.25 million. What is 203 and what is 1903 and what is 1919? Time. What this guy didn't do is not to spend, or this guy did not spend, did not waste it. He kept it. He deposited it. He used it. And then that became 26.25 million. As a candler sold the recipe, and sorry, not as a candler, sorry, John Pemberton sold the Coca-Cola recipe for $2,300. And this guy, as a candler, this guy in 2023, same recipe, no change. He sold it for $25 million. What is $2,300 to $25 million in just a few years' time? In just a few years' time, someone is able to keep the money and someone is wastefully spending the money. Someone is making use of the time and someone is not making use of the time. Someone is using his capability and productivity, putting it to productivity. And the third thing the Lord gives you is resources. He gives you the resources. He gives you the resources. He gives you the time, number one. He gives you the capability. Everyone has capability. Your capability may not be comparable to my capability. My capability may be different. According to my capacity, the Lord gives me the capability. But every one of you, every one of us, God has given time. God has given you. Some people may not have time. For example, I was searching up Jim Elliott. You know Jim Elliott, right? We have made a drama also here. When did he die? He was killed. But within that time, someone has a long time, 90 years. I got 60 years now. And you may have a little bit more time. I don't know. And some people live up to 100 years, 90 years, and so on. But some people die, like Jim Elliott, die at 30 years old. But in 30 years, he achieved what he needed to achieve, Jim Elliott. You know the story, right? So some might have long time, but everyone has time. Someone may have a lot of capabilities, but everyone has some capability or the other for productivity. And some people will have resources, more resources. Some people will not have not many resources. The reason why you moved to New Zealand is for more resources. And you need to make use of your resources to build and so on. And this guy, you see the Forbes magazine, Peter Thiel, one of the original investors of Facebook, invested $500,000 in the company in 2005. His return was 800 times in the initial investments. He sold all 25 million shares of Facebook for $400 billion in 2012. And I can show you that if you look at this magazine, Forbes magazine, you will see all the success stories. You might say, oh, these are big people and so on. There's a lot of success involved. And you always talk about the big people. But I told you already, but how much we have done within that little we have in this very church. We're not many families here, but we still see success. We still see success just because we did not get into wasteful spending. We did not get into, we just tried and kept and then let it grow and then invested in the proper way. And I'm telling you, many of you is over $1 million worth. I was telling my own daughter yesterday what she is worth. Just because while all her friends were spending money and then doing all that they wanted, my daughter put it away and then invested in something. Now she is worth something. Her net worth I calculated and then showed it to her yesterday. And you understand all of this. And the Lord is talking about these things. Now, as a church, what have we done? I've told you what you've done personally. What you achieved personally. What have we done as an organization? What have we done as a church? Which company are you working for? I don't know. Will it allow you to do the same thing over and over again with the same result? Which company did not call you in the beginning of the year and tell, now, this is what we produced last year. Now this year, 15% more. That is our target. 20% more. This is our target. You work for a target. Which company doesn't tell you that? What about our churches? Where is the progress? Where is the productivity? Where is the work? Where is the tilling? Where is investing? Where is capital investments? What have we done? The problem is, I just put his name is Kenneth Bailey, and he lived in the Middle East for 40 years, I think, 45 years, just to study the parables and produced books. Jesus through the Middle Eastern eyes and the poet and peasant, and then he unpacks parables within the original context in which they were told so that you will understand a little bit more. I just wanted to tell you about this. I told you what a talent is worth and the three spheres of talent. What are the three spheres of talent, anyone? Time, opportunities, capabilities, productivity, possibility for productivity. Number three, resources. God gives you the resources to produce, and everyone got them. And the Lord gives us gifts. And I told you, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and cometh down from the Father of gifts. James 1:7. The earth is the Lord's and all its fullness, the world and those who dwell therein. Your life is the Lord's, including your life is Lord's property. You're not your property because your life can be taken anytime. And we have seen so many stories of how young people passed away, just like that. Just like that. Everything is God's. That's what we want to tell you. And I don't know how you handle all that God has given into your lives. What do you do with your finances? We talked about it. What do you do with the opportunities the Lord has given? What do you do with the spouse that God has given you? What do you do with the church God has given? What do you do with the children the Lord has given to you? I want to stop there actually. What do you do with your children? What do you do with your spouse? What do you do with the church? What do you do with the job? What do you do with the neighbors? What do you do with the voting opportunities that is going to come? And last time, what do you do with your educational opportunities? God has given you education, right? God has sent you school. God has sent you to my children, Epsom Girls School, the best school in this city. We looked for the best school. I moved my houses just to put my girls in the best schools possible. I never stayed in one suburb just to get into the admission into the schools. And I have been with you in your journey as well. When Akash needed to go to his school, when Ashita needed to go to your school, when Susie needed to go to your school, we were thinking about which school to go to and how do we get into those schools and how do we do that. And we cracked our heads. What do you do with the school that the Lord is the educational opportunity? How did you handle the evangelistic opportunities that the Lord has given you? How do you handle the service opportunity the Lord gives you? What have you done with the social media opportunity, TikTok videos, and what a rubbish people are producing? How can we use that opportunity to do something for productivity? And I recently learned someone is earning $700 producing a video for TikTok a week. Social media opportunities. How do you handle and the opportunity the Lord given? God has given you a home. God has given you a vehicle. God has given you friends. What do you do with them? I've given you a long list, right? But I want to tell you some of the gifts the Lord has given you. Listen to me very carefully here. Some of the gifts and the talents the Lord has given you has eternal value. And some of the gifts the Lord has given you has temporal value. For example, the money the Lord has given you has temporal value. The house that the Lord has given you has a temporal value. The vehicle that Lord has given you is temporal value. The dress that you wear, the shoes that you wear, the creams that you use, and the spray that you put is temporal value. But they have certain things eternal value. And this is important. That's where the accountability comes in. What have you done with your spouse? What have you done with your children? What have you done with your evangelistic opportunities? What have you done with the service opportunities? What have you done with your friends? What have you done with your neighbors as eternal value? Why eternal value? Take your children, for example. All the houses and the cars and the rest of it, and I don't know which sofa that you sit in and which car you drive in and what kind of cookers that you use and the technologies that you use and whether you use a Mac or a Windows, I don't know what you boast of. Maybe you have an iPhone, I don't have one. You have a Samsung big one, I don't know. These are all one aspect of, these are all God-given gifts, but how you use has a temporal value. But because you will not take your Samsung phone to heaven, but you will take your son to heaven. They have eternal value. What you have done with your neighbor has an eternal value. What you've done with your colleague has an eternal value. What you've done with your friends has an eternal value. Either you invest in their lives for eternity or you just tell, this is another Christian. Oh, Christians drink, That's what they told me in India. Oh, you don't drink? Christians drink. Christians drink a lot of, the consumer. The Lord, the gifts that the Lord has given you, when the accountability comes, so now this master comes back, and then now he's, after a long time, the master has come back. Now he's asking, what have you done, my friend, with the 5 talents that I've given you? Lord, I've made it 10,000. Okay, great. Now I want you to note that word. What does the master say? Well done, my faithful servant. Now enter into my joy. Can you read that? Enter into my joy. Now you can enter into my joy. 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 I want you to get that one. Many times, how many times you have been joyful? Sometimes I'm very stressful. I go through a lot of stress sometimes. But think of every moment being joyful. How many of you are really, really joyful every moment of the day? How many of you go through anxiety? How many of you go through some kind of stress? So how many of you go through some kind of hopelessness sometimes? But think of a time that you have joy, full of joy. Enter into my presence. Enter into the joy that I have for you today. Enter into joy, The thing that we are talking about is joy. When you have productive lives, when you invest it properly, you got a joyful life. Enter into my joy. The second servant, the same thing. Second slave, it's written here. He's a slave. He's a slave. He doesn't have anything. Now you got 2, and you brought 2 more. Enter into my joy. Well done, faithful servant. But I want you to notice this guy's argument here. What does he say? The one who had received 1 talent came and said, Lord, I know you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Now look, there you have what is yours. I had a hard time understanding this. What did you do? He got $1.4 million, right? So he just kept it somewhere. He dug, kept it. Now he's bringing back, Lord, I didn't do anything, and I'm returning your money. You gave me 1.4, I did not use $1 there, and I'm returning your money, so take it. The reason for that, the reason for the returning, and the master says, okay, I'm such a kind of fellow, but you ought to have deposited mine at least with the bankers, so that I would have got some interest out of it. So the banking principles were there in Jesus' time. And Jesus is saying very clearly, at least you get some interest, right? When you invest my money. So I gave you 1.4 million long time ago. Now you are returning 1.4 million. What about the inflation? What you are returning to me is less than 1.4 now. You understand? That's point number 1. And point number 2, and the more important point, because the reason why the master is calling him wicked, of course you understand the laziness. Master is calling him the wicked, and I want to tell you, God has trouble with a lot of his kids who want to argue with him. How many times you tried and argued with someone of authority? How many times you had problem with your own dad to go and then be accountable to him? In your own dad. How many times you and I have the problems being accountable to the Lord who has given you everything, who has loaned you even the gift of life, God has loaned you everything for him, and you go and then argue with him. That's number 2. Number 3, when you go and then tell someone you're a hard man, when you go and tell him that you are a proud man, when you go and tell someone on the face that you want to reap where you have not sown, and you want to gather where you have not scattered. You're unreasonable man. You haven't sowed anything, but you want to reap there. And you have not scattered any seed, you haven't done anything, and then you want to get. You're proud, you're unreasonable. What happens to the other person? When you keep telling that you're nonsense, you haven't done that well, you didn't, having received $1.4 million, enjoying the very place where he is enjoying, the very status that he is enjoying, having $1.4 million in his pocket for a long time, and the very reason that guy is still here on this time, because of that master. Now he's telling, you're a hard man, you're unreasonable, you're not generous, and so on. Can you understand the reason for the argument? Many times, Lord, what are you doing when I'm struggling here? Where is God when I have this kind of trouble? What is God doing? Why is so much of suffering all over the place? Where is God doing, His children arguing back with his fathers, with his heavenly fathers, with his physical fathers. These guys, these idiots. That's what it is. The second thing, the last thing, why didn't you put it in the bank? Bank keeps a record. Bank keeps a record. Many people don't want a record, don't want to be seen. They want to hide it. They don't want to have a record. No log, no mention of anything. Suppose the master doesn't return at all. No account, no log, no mention of who gave what to who. No patron, we call it. No will, nothing. So you got 1.4 million in case this man doesn't come back. Many people want to live a secret because they don't have anything to show off. Nil. No productivity, no hard work, every time complaining. The whole life is complaining. You're like this, you're like this, you're like this, because of this anger, because of this, like this, because of this, like this. Lord has given you time, given you the capabilities and the opportunities to produce, and given you resources. If you are standing at zero, that reflects what you've done. As a church, God has given us 13 years. God has given us the resources. God has given us the capabilities. How many of us are talented? In your own workplace, you are producing millions with your talents and everything else. And God has given you resources, and now we are telling, this is not good, that is not good, this house is not good, this place is not good, this music is not good, the way that they are doing is not good, why this man is not giving money, why that man is not doing this, why this is doing like this. And I have heard in that kitchen so many times, people discouraging each other. Soon after the church, soon after the message is over, and how much of gossip has gone in and out. What have you achieved? People's lives were destroyed because of nonsense talk. Somebody is investing in someone's life and then you are pulling him down. What have you done? What have you done? You are the master who expects a return where you have not sowed. God is going to come back and then ask for an account. And after the account comes what? The judgment. Every one of us must appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due. What they have done in the body, whether good or evil, we got to give an account. Not only an account, the Lord is going to judge us and then send where we belong. Where we belong. whether you go somewhere else into the joy and somewhere into the darkness. As much as it is true spiritually, it is true physically in the material world as well. Whether you get into your joy or whether you get into the darkness, destroying each other's lives. You know? And where are we as a church? Now, the whole story is this actually, if you actually understand what the story is about. The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, he took bread and he gave thanks. And he broke it and given it to people. This is my body, which is for you. Take it and eat it. On the same night, when he had taken the cup, he said, "This is my blood in the new covenant." When you have it, remember that you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. And then he died. He rose on the third day. He was with people for 40 days. And from the very olive mountain, while he was going, he said, "I will come back. Meanwhile, what I have given to you is yours. When I come back, I'm going to ask for the account. What have you done, Ramesh? What have you done, David? What have you done, Amresh? What have you done, Henry? What have you done, each of you? What have you done? I've given you the time." How much time? Now it is 23 years, is it? How much time has he given? How much resources is given? Each talent is 1.4 million, I told you, right? And I don't know how many talents that the Lord has given you. What have you done with them? 23 years. And for you and for me in this church, 13 years, as we're going to celebrate our anniversary very soon. What time are you coming and what time are you going? What are you doing soon after the church? What kind of language are you using? What kind of things that you're talking about? Where is your investment going? Where is your productivity? What have you achieved? What you are today standing here is a reflection of what you have done with your money last, and I don't know how many years, what you have done with your talents for the last few years. If you are standing here on zero and complaining about everything the Lord has freely given, Lord, you're not giving me anything. It's the reflection of your situation here. Lord has given you 23 years. And I don't know how many years he's going to give. He's a God full of grace. He's gracious. He doesn't want you to catch you off guard and so on, you know. The same story is told even before. Please go home and then read chapter 24 and 25 in context. The wise and foolish women. The wise women, they kept the oil. They brought the oil and they were able to clean up the lamp. You know, they were working, you know. What have you done? The Lord is going to come back very soon. I don't know when. Case number one, scenario number one. Or maybe the Lord is going to call you back. Your life is going to end. Still, you will be standing for an account. Today, this afternoon, if you are called home, if I am called home, and then God asks you, "What have you done, David?" I've given you 60 years of life. And I've given you the opportunities. I've given you the resources. I've given you the capabilities according to what you can bear. What have you done with them? Then the judgment comes, whether I end up in the joy of the Lord or I end up in the darkness, where the gnashing of teeth. I don't want to hear those voices. I don't want to hear that noise, the noise of gnashing of teeth. I don't want. I want to be in the party, you know. I want to be in the party situation. I want to be in the joy. And if you want to be in the joy, you got to invest. You got to keep what God has given you. You got to hold on. You got to invest. You got to bring productivity. That is what the parable is about. As we approach, I want you to come back and then see what the Lord has done. And while going, what the Lord has told us to do in the light of the word that has come to you. And I want you to close your eyes, look at all the things that we looked at, and then see where our life is.